All right. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
My headphones aren't working though.
Yeah, Carter, I went to see do the walkthrough of the soft launch of the Highline.
Hey, how'd that go?
It's good. It's very overgrown. It's really wild. But it was, and it wasn't very crowded at all. It was kind of cool to see.
Were there?
I signed up to go tomorrow. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, the process worked well. You know, they checked your thing at the bottom. They checked it at the top. It was good, and there weren't enough people to make it a challenge of social distancing.
Did they take
How
Weird.
long did it take you to get through it?
15 minutes.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Okay.
It's just weird to see it with no one there. It's kind of cool.
Right. Yeah.
Probably nice.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's experience. Yeah.
I remember when I first went. It was
Hi,
great.
Janine.
Hi, Barbara.
I'm trying to get on my iPad. I'm having difficulty, so right now I'm on the iPhone.
Can
Well,
you see it?
it works just fine on the iPhone, so
Okay.
you won't be able to see the presentation as well. But-
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
So we have, Matt just said he's trying to get in.
Yeah. I just
I sent him
him.
my invite. All he has to do is click it and change the name.
Oh, that's easy.
I sent him, resent the one, so
Oh.
you should have the proper one too.
Okay.
Did you send me a new one also, by any chance?
Yeah, we did that last week. I mean, it's set up.
Oh, okay. I don't know why it's not coming up. It keeps spinning.
I am not expecting a lot of people on this call, but we have lots of important stuff to discuss. So, hey, Michael, wherever you are, that looks lovely.
Oh, okay, wait a minute, I got it now.
Okay, we have Amy. And I think we are.
Got it.
Does anyone know if Mar is joining? I know she was on
She
vacation.
said she was. I'll text her.
Okay. Barbara, we've got you in stereo.
Whoever's
Whose
got
phone
that
is
feedback,
that?
it's actually not just a mic. It's you've got two sound systems going at one time, phone or computer. Not
Barbara, I
both.
think that you have it, that since you're signed in twice, the audio is echoing and causing the feedback.
Got it. Okay.
Now that she's on mute, she turned it off. She muted him.
Rich, what is your face background?
So that's the picture I took today, entrance to the Highline.
Oh, okay.
That's
And
nice.
yeah.
Great. Okay, and I give it another minute. Okay. Give me one more minute and then we'll start.
So I guess we get to say wonderful writing of a resolution, Janine.
Well, they're drafts, so those are for discussion during business sessions.
I know, but you're amazing how well you do it. I'm really,
Thank you.
you know, in
Thank
the
you.
old days, I used to be chair of a committee, and that's a lot of hard work.
Yes. Okay. It's 6:35, so we are going to start. My name is Janine Kiley. I chair the Schools and Education Committee for Community Board 2, and this is our July meeting. I'm going to go around, don't know if people have, committee members can introduce themselves. Rich?
He's on mute.
Yeah.
I was
Rich?
actually, yeah, I'm there. This is Rich Cacapola. I'm a member of the committee.
Patricia Larry, a member of the committee as well.
Barbara Glassman, a member of the committee, non-voting member.
No, you're a voting member of the committee.
Okay.
You're not a public member. Barbara is also a retired middle school principal. Betty?
Hi, I'm Betty. I'm on the board.
Michael? Matt?
Hi, I'm Michael Markowitz. I'm a public member and member of the committee.
I'm Matt Metzger, board member.
Keen? Then Amy?
I'm Keen Berger, member of the committee.
Amy, you are muted.
Sorry, Amy Brenna. I'm a member of the Education Committee and I'm on the board.
And then we have 3 non-committee members joining us tonight. I'll have you guys introduce yourselves, Janet, Valerie, and then Carter.
Hi, Janet Liff, full board member.
Hi, Valerie Della Rosa, board member and chair of the Reopening Working Group.
Carter Booth, chair of the board. Hi, everyone.
Thank you. And I see we actually have, I'm going to start with let me share my screen and then Patricia, can you bring Bob Townley in as a, we're gonna,
We also have Brian Pape.
oh, did Brian join us? Wonderful. Okay. Just a moment. Okay, we have 3 topics tonight, but before we get into that, I just want to go through meeting protocol. We're just asking everyone to be respectful to whoever's speaking. Attendees will be on mute until Q&A. We'll have Q&A after each topic. People can raise their hands to ask questions. I think we should be able to get to everyone's questions tonight because it's not a very large group. So our, let's see, page down is not working so well. Okay, so we have 3 agenda topics tonight: open streets and play streets and expanding spaces for public schools. Number 2 is funding free broadband for New York City public school students. And our 3rd topic is an update on Hudson Square and the Bleecker schools, and then we'll go into business session and discuss resolutions that we shared with the committee earlier today. So first I just want to highlight, and I'm really realizing I have to make this screen smaller, sorry. Sorry. I'm gonna move you guys. Okay. I don't know how to get rid of these. Okay, so we're basically just looking at our schools in Community Board 2. Right now, the plan is for schools to reopen with some kind of blended program where some of the kids will be in school some of the days and the rest will be working from home. The DOE has picked, has selected 65 square feet as the amount needed for each student. Let me just fix this one last time. Sorry, my share screen is not working so great. Can people see that okay? No, okay.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great. PS3 is 103% capacity with 30 plus kids per class, and the new requirement is going to be about 12 kids per class. So they're going to, because of that, fewer kids are going to be able to be in school, and the schools are really looking to expand their spaces. So they're looking at everything: auditoriums, gymnasiums, gymatoriums, cafeterias, and so forth. PS41's at 100% capacity. 75 Morton is near capacity. City of School High School, which is across the street from J.J. Walker, is at 156%. Chelsea Vocational and NYC School that share a building, they're at 82 and 91%. And these are at the huge, large class sizes. So to get all the kids in there, it's going to take it's going to take a lot to get these kids. The kids are going to not be in school as much as we would like them to be because the buildings don't have enough space. Sorry. So just as this is old data, but it hasn't materially changed. 25% of New York City's land is streets. So an easy option is to really expand play streets or open streets, which is the current program. I just want to talk about these two programs. We have Janet Liff on the call. She's from our transportation committee, and she's an expert in a lot of these areas, so she can address some of them. So play streets, historically, 3 of our schools have had play streets. PS3 most recently, Academy of St. Joseph, and Cook Street, Cook Center Academy on McDougal Street. These are for children. They're fully closed to traffic, excluding emergencies. And there's usually, you'll see a NYPD barricade. They're hosted by the schools, and at least 2 adults need to be out there. And it's basically during school hours between Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m. This program and all programs like it have basically been on hold since March. So the schools that had them last year didn't reapply, which would typically have happened in the spring for next year. The city has, in the meantime, has really ramped up its open streets program, essentially for social distancing. It's for pedestrians and cyclists. And these streets are closed to through traffic, but they still permit entry for deliveries, drop off and pickup, and the same with play streets for emergencies. And traffic is capped at 5 miles per hour. And they're hosted by community groups, neighborhood groups. They could be hosted by schools. NYPD is hosting some of them, but they're not there all the time. So these, if a school were to do an open street, it would still need supervision for at least likely 2 adults. And this program, if you go to the DOT website, has been adapted for restaurants, open street restaurants in Community Board 2. Mulberry Street in Little Italy is now completely closed to traffic and for dining. And Cool Streets, which I'm not sure, that'll possibly as the summer gets hotter, streets where they open it up to, cooling down. And these can be up from as early as 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. at night. And just want to go through the requirements on these. There's on the block, you can't have it on a 2-way street or high volume street. So you couldn't have it on Hudson Street or 6th Avenue. You can't have it on a bus or truck route, which again would be the M20 bus goes up 6th Avenue, goes up Hudson and goes down 7th Avenue. It can't be adjacent to a hospital, so it could be a little tricky with what PS41 would do. The commercial establishments, open streets was obviously almost designed for these, so that is not the case. Scaffolding or tripping hazards is an issue for play streets, not for open streets, because there's scaffolding on every block. And the concept of open streets, there's no restriction. Play streets in general are to expand play. So if the school's across the street from a park, there's no need for a play street. They would just go to the park. The open street program is exactly that, to provide additional space for moving around. They all need supervision. They all need people to set up and remove the barriers that you get from the police department. and they all require an application. Let's see. And then I just want to show a quick map of community board schools and community board 2. We have a lot of schools. We have a lot of public schools, a lot of private schools. The dark purple dots are all the public schools. And 2 of them have co-locations with District 75 schools, which just requires coordination on the buses. 75 Morton and City Ave School. I still have it here because it's still a school, but Our Lady of Pompeii, the Archdiocese, announced last week that they plan to close it. So that's the red dot. And I just want to, we can discuss more detail as zoomed in maps, but I wanted to talk tonight about supporting open streets for all schools. Because basically right now there isn't a formal program in place since the Play Street program has basically been put on hold. But we have 1.1 million students, and it would be great to have something similar at the city level that can be rolled out just as quickly as the restaurant one was rolled out. And then basically these could be operated by schools as well as after school programs and community organizations. Because kids may only be in school 2 days a week, they still need somewhere to go, which is sort of the other aspect of this conversation, which is supporting the acquisition of temporary or permanent sites for additional social distancing for public schools. So this could be nonprofit institutions, cultural institutions, churches, closed Catholic schools, vacant offices, co-working spaces, hotels and retail. And I know sometimes trailers were used, particularly after 9/11, they were used at overcrowded schools. Bob Townley is director of Manhattan Youth, and he runs the after-school programs at more than 20 locations downtown, but at 75 Morton. Bob is on vacation, so I promised to let him go early as sort of our guest speaker. So thank you for joining us, Bob. Are you on this call now? With my screen shared, I can't. Bob, are you there?
He's on it, needs to unmute himself.
Okay. I am going to stop sharing my screen for now.
Unmute me. I'm here on my phone. I lost my internet connection just as it started. So I'm not on my computer, and I'm not really used to, I've never used my phone for a Zoom call, but I quickly learned how to do it. So Janine, did you want me to just mention that I've been working on this for a little bit of time now?
Yes, absolutely.
And I take a long view of it. I know everybody's focused on the reopening of schools, but this could go, this type of schooling can go for the whole year. So, as things progress and we see what's going on and we make adjustments, we might be able to, implement more stuff for childcare, more stuff for schools, including the play streets or the trailers. But when I was conceptualizing this, I was thinking more not play streets or open streets, but more like construction companies get carte blanche when they build a building in New York. They close the street off, they fence the area around it, and it's theirs. And I was thinking more along the lines of construction permits that are issued in the street than these existing programs. But whatever we can get is good. But I was hoping for 24/7 space that the schools didn't have to, every morning bring the stuff out, bring it back in. So I think the city has to think creatively on this, think long-term on this. And because it's, and Janine, thank you. Your wealth of information. I didn't even know that the schools were thinking of 65 feet per child. Let's say the average classroom is 600 square feet, 700 square feet. That's going to be a constraint for us in after school for sure. How do we do it?
I also just want to jump in, and a PS3 parent shared that PS3 is looking at 8 kids per class, not 12, because their rooms must be smaller.
Wow.
So that really, I mean, that really gets tricky when you're starting with 30 kids in class. It's almost moving it to groups of cohorts of four different cohorts per class.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think this is all going to evolve, and the thing that the community boards could help in the discussion is just securing more space wherever it is. And, you know, if there was an article in the Times about it by Michelle Goldberg, said you got to start thinking real estate. And then I passed on this other piece through the Daily News of a parent suggesting that. And it just seems like a good idea. There are no easy answers, though.
thank you, Bob. And Bob, in terms of DYCD funding, I know you, all the providers took a big hit for the summer. What was the budget for the fiscal year 21?
Well, we have not laid off any of our staff. We're funding them through our existing revenues, but we were told that there would be no summer funding. We're not sure that is what shook out. Let me just say, all the protests in this city have really put money back into the DYCD budget, because many of those groups are community-based groups throughout the city, and they were getting hit disproportionately. And so now I have not been back or in communication, because DYCD is really focused on starting their summer youth employment programs, and we don't have a summer youth employment program. So we're focused for September. We don't know exactly what the budget will be. We don't know what the requirements will be. You know, that's why I'm up here resting, because when I get back, there's going to be a lot to figure out. Hi. What was that?
We have obviously a lot of open questions, but we clearly need more space. Particularly now I'm hearing that TS3 is going to have 8 kids per class, which is great for education, but I don't think they're getting more teachers, hiring more teachers necessarily. I'm going to go around to the committee and then to the public for people to ask questions and offer suggestions. If you could just raise your hand. If you. Janet?
This is just a small thing, very comprehensive, but when you're listing all those things, tents is also a new thing that people are exploring because of air circulation, so that they're particularly safe. And I just might add that to the list of options.
Mm-hmm.
We would need space to put those tents.
Mm-hmm.
Akilah?
Hi, I had a question about, do you know if, I know we're having a conversation on space, but I wasn't sure about this. Do you know if after school programs will be allowed to offer childcare during the times that children are not in school?
Bob, I'm going to throw that back to you, and maybe allowed is.
So that is the $100 can you hear me? My phone is. That's the $100 question. But if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would say no, because all these rooms that the school needs are going to be used at the school during the day. So we have a community center downtown, but that capacity would, and plus we have other programs there during the day. And I'm on calls with, tens and tens of community providers throughout the city every week. And that's really the big question. But if I had to guess, I think, and that's bad, that's not the way we would like it, but how could we conceive of, if the schools are turning away kids during the day, how could we conceive that we can get in there before 3 o'clock? I'm not sure we can even get in there after 3 o'clock with proper protocols and checking temperatures and my staff coming on the subway. So, you know, the simplest thing for me would be, you know, to have these, you know, for the city to figure out some sort of childcare for parents in spaces that are not being utilized. So, you know, that's one thing. I don't think the schools are going to be able to take the capacity of kids that are not in school. Again, not in school, but come there before 3 o'clock because there's not going to be any space. One of the things about using the outdoor space is, yes, you could add additional classrooms in the lunchroom, the gymnasium, and the cafeteria, and use those spaces and eat outside in tents or, you know, temporary, you know, structures. They can be quite elaborate, but so that would increase the amount of classrooms in a school. But I don't think after-school programs will be able to use those schools. But I'm just saying that off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, with kids in school, yes, Carter?
You know, one of the big questions is what are the requirements? And Bob, you might be able to help us out on that, but what are the requirements that the DOE has and other groups have for space to be utilized? Does anybody know? I mean, I've brought this up with a few people because I think once we have a better understanding of that, we can actually start maybe trying to find some other spaces.
I mean, just the short of it is the DOE has not communicated much even to DYCD or to the many after-school providers that are not DYCD funded. There's been very little communications. The principals still don't know what's going on. I think that the community boards are a unique place because it seems like the DOE responds to them more than it does providers. So, you know, I think you guys should keep asking questions and we should keep all sharing information. I feel sorry for the DOE. They're overwhelmed, but that's right. What are the requirements to come into those schools? And we haven't heard anything about it yet. And I'm assuming
other spaces too, like how many bathrooms do they need? What kind of hand washing facility needed? You know, just basic elements that so we can start thinking, but it's you know, it's hard to understand without even knowing the most basic of criteria except square footage. You know, even outdoor space. Does outdoor space have to be adjacent to schools with bathrooms? I would assume so, right? Or somewhere, or what would the requirements be? Because we've got a lot of things we could do, but it's just.
Yeah. I'm not so sure about that. PS3 goes to JJ Walker and there are no restrooms there.
Right, but they walk back to the school, right? So they're there. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm sure if it was an enclosed building, it would require something. Do any other committee members have questions or comments? Okay. I'm going to go to the, yes, Akila?
I just had a question. I just want, maybe you said this already, Bob, I'm not sure. But in terms of like safety requirements, not just what the after school programs need to do, but but first of all, have after school programs, I mean, you may have said this already, I may have missed it, been told what their safety requirements are, and also, is there time in the day after school?
Oh, you cut out, Akila, after time in the day? Can you repeat that? Akila, turn off your video in case it's a bad connection. Okay.
Hi.
We didn't hear what you said after you were talking about safety requirements for after school.
Yes, I just wanted to know if they have announced any safety requirements in terms of the cleaning and the degree of kind of cleaning that needs to happen in the spaces, and also, you know, has the DOE thought about the timing of cleaning after school is done for the next day?
We have not been given one sentence of information. I assume that school will have their own internal mechanisms for cleaning the schools. I don't know what they will require after school to do. And the you know, the way, for those of you that don't know, we operate Pier 25, and we have a couple of programs there that are up and running now. And the way it's worked is really, you know, it's each program for themselves. You get these general guidelines, and I believe the principals and others will do their very best. There'll be certain guidelines that are specific, but certain guidelines that are not. And it'll rely upon the schools to figure it out themselves within the guidelines that the DOE will issue to the custodians and to the schools, to the principals, and then they'll tell us what we need to do to do it. But there's been none of those specifics have been thought of. And I could tell you also, we operate a swimming pool and we operate a community center, and we have, you know, we could probably open it today and be not out of compliance, but we have chosen not to. We want to see what the, you know, state of the art is now. So we've been very, very slow in rolling out. We don't want to endanger anybody. My staff, I don't even know if they're going to want to come to work. So we got a lot of thinking to do here. And I would just say before, because it sounds like you're wrapping up, I don't know how many other questions are. I don't know if your community board, like our community board, meets in August. I would for sure think that the youth committee should, you know, this will be a very interesting August. And if you have the ability to meet, you know, the more the merrier, and the more, you know, because the communities are going to play a very important role in this.
Meeting in August is definitely on the agenda for our business session.
Yeah.
I want to open it up to our attendees. Does anyone on the line want to have any questions to ask? And obviously, no questions about reopening. I know there's some PS3 parents on here. Are parents or educators there looking at sites nearby? Just kind of work with parents. I'll just sort of throw it out to people. Okay.
Something in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to read the chat. DOE has announced nothing except the CDC 64 square feet per person in the building allocation. Is that from the CDC? Somebody else earlier today asked me where the source was. Principals still don't even know what the schedule, I mean, I think the principals got the same slides that everybody else got last week. That, you know, I'm hearing from the schools that they need outside leadership to help work with concepts outside of the school building itself. So that would be us and others, our elected officials, and trying to figure out what the options are. So right now we're sort of dealing with very few parameters. Hold on, let me go back, see if I can do it better this time.
Janine, this one has the hand raised. an
Oh,
attendee.
who is that? Oh, Nicole?
Nicole, yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to talk. Just unmute yourself, Nicole.
Hi. I'm glad I was
Can
able
you
to
speak
join
a little
you.
louder? It's a little quiet.
Hi, I'm glad I was able to join you this evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just want to let the committee know that PS3 has a reopening task force that includes 30 members. That includes parents and teachers. And I believe that the DOE has asked that all public schools have a reopening task force. So it would be good to reach out to see those task force are their ongoing agendas.
Is yours fully formed, or is yours in the process of being formed?
It has been formed. They had a meeting today. I am not on the task force, but I've been communicating with them.
Great. Yeah, because I know a lot of schools are sort of in the process of forming them over the last, since 4th of July type of thing. Okay, that's great. And that's good to know. Keen? You need to unmute yourself, Keen.
Yes. What do we know? We know the Board of Education is not all that well organized. Do we know that there's going to be money for this stuff? Once we know what we want, will we be able to get it? Or is how excited is the city to support education this fall? What do we know? Do we know anything about that?
There is no money yet, but if there's some good ideas, there's no reason why we shouldn't push for them. I think that's the way to look at it. I know that the School Construction Authority has put a hold on all, all non-critical projects. School budgets, everything has been put on hold. I think there's just a lot of unknowns there right now. I don't think the school. Nicole, do you know if PS3 got their budget? I heard that everyone was expecting to get it in mid-July.
I have not heard about, sorry, I have not heard about the budget.
Got it.
Nicole, who are the people that are on the task force again? You said teachers, some parents, and
yeah, there's about 20 teachers and 10 parents.
With the principal, right?
Yes, that includes the principal. And
do they have someone on? Do they have somebody from the building, like facilities, that's on that task force?
Oh, that's interesting. Let me look. I am not seeing anyone from facilities.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Colin, I see your hand raised.
Hi. I first want to thank you all for a great discussion. I'm on the PS3 task force. The method is the task force is reaching out to custodial staff, food staff, and some of the other related, I guess, members of the building, and then are trying to come up with a thought out plan. There are no guidelines from the DOE at this point, I'm sorry to say.
That's what I suspected, unfortunately. When do you meet? Are you meeting once a week, more frequently?
Correct, it's once a week, but there are several subcommittees that have been broken out and are expected to communicate during the week so that they can more thoroughly share at the weekly Zoom calls.
Okay. And I do know that at a previous meeting, and I can't remember who, someone from PS3 wanted to make sure that they would have the Play Street back on I guess, on Barrow Street. or on Grove Street. I guess the question is, is there a committee that is specifically focused on outdoor space, and is there additional play streets that you would want?
There is very much a large appetite to try and obtain some outdoor space just so that teachers and staff have it as a tool. It might also involve queuing up parents upon entry to the building. So there's practical things as well as trying to find creative spaces. We do have several subcommittees. I think one of them is looking at the permits, but if not, I'd be more than happy to put you in touch with someone. I just want to thank Bob as well for that very creative idea about trying to harness existing, by the way, there was a great presentation of Open Street and Play Street, and then Bob's suggestion about harnessing something akin to the construction permits. You guys are great at brainstorming. We need more of this.
Okay.
And this, not the nicest facility. Center, I think, remains closed, so I don't know if that's another opportunity for DJ Walker. So, you know, Parks has canceled all permits through the end of summer, but that does, PS3 had permits at JJ several days a week. So it was Parks. Okay, I'm going to read, Stephanie, I'm going to read your question about this reopening task force. Stephanie, where do your children attend school? So let me unmute you. Let me find you. Stephanie, where do your children attend school?
Oh, I don't have children. I'm a teacher.
Oh, you teach? I'm sorry, you teach in Community Board 3. Obviously, I'm having trouble reading.
Yeah, I live east of, I live in Community Board 2, teach in Community Board 3. So.
And what school are you at?
Dual language high school.
Okay. I was going to say if it was an L to put you in touch with. But I think you could take it back. That, I mean, so I know 75 Morton is starting one or has started one. I know my child's school in 276 is in the process of starting one. I think they're all stages. I commend PS3 because it sounds like you guys are ahead of things. Already meeting. I know Salk is planning one. I would just go back to your school and say everybody's doing this. You need to do it too.
Okay, thank you.
And then I would reach out to, I'm not sure who your council member is. It's probably Carlina Rivera. Work through her office if you don't get any traction. That would be my advice.
Got it, thank you.
Yes, and Bob, you've mentioned public library. Kind of goes into our second agenda topic, but which was the digital divide, but it's also because right now the libraries are closed, or it's like a grab and go. You can get a book, but the libraries have internet access, which Patricia reminded me of earlier. So if the kids aren't allowed in the school, we've got a system, and particularly for families that don't have reliable internet, and it's frankly a better option for older children, but they can go to the library. And I think libraries should give priority to students who need quiet internet, Wi-Fi enabled spaces to work. But so far, I mean, the libraries are, that whole block, across the street from Cydia School and PS3 and 75 Morton. There's a ball field, there's a children's playground, albeit not in the best shape, and the library sources that we need to tap into. My screen briefly, because I want to, the creative juices flowing to get people to spend, while we have all these people on the call, I want to get people thinking about what options are nearby. Give me just a moment. Okay, so this is Hudson Square on the west side. And let's see. Sorry. I have my groovy, so see the thing. So we have, sorry, that's not the one I want. Sorry. Stuck. Yeah, so we have 75 more. We've got PS3 here, 75 Morton. The question is, what other resources? We've got the giant park here, the library. Is there any obvious location nearby where there's opportunities to get space? And I just encourage people to, take a look at the map. And then here at PS3, we Healthplex, just a few blocks away. But with PS 130 over here, I just looked at the elementary school. Baxter Street's a pretty quiet, relatively quiet street, so that might be an opportunity. From MoCA, the Museum of Chinese in America, I don't know what spaces are in there.
I'd say that's also close to Mulberry Street Park, that one, right?
No, that's much further down. That's all the way, the PS 130. It's actually not near any parks, really. I mean, frankly, the closest park is the Salvio at Spring and at Spring Street.
Yeah, Spring Street and Mulberry.
Yeah, so not that close. Here's a better map, but there just really isn't a lot of space near there.
Yeah.
Okay, for some reason I can't stop streaming.
Janine, what about Pier 40? I mean, can they utilize like that space during the day, that open area at Pier 40 where they used to do baseball?
Yes, that's a great suggestion. That's still not, even though the Battery Park City ball fields are open, the Pier 40 space, an opportunity, and could be sorts of opportunities, obviously subject to good weather.
But that can be tented, like what Bob was saying.
Yeah.
And
Pier
then,
40 also has a lot of unused rooms in Pier 40.
Yeah.
There's many, many empty rooms.
Yeah. That could be used in the winter as well, right? I'm thinking of when I take that elevator up to the roof.
Yeah.
That's the Parks Department, right? Pier 40?
No, that's Hudson River Park Trust.
Yeah.
Trust.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Do we have on this topic?
But also they're all the piers. I mean, there's the pier at Christopher Street.
46?
Yeah, the pier right at Christopher Street. So it's like, it's not too far from PS3. It's a few blocks. And you can put a tent there. They have that like fake AstroTurf field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that pier. There's a couple of piers that have open space like that. Down in Battery Park City, there's the North Moore Street Pier.
Yeah, that's in Pier 25. That's
Pier 25.
That's the one that Bob operates.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them going up and down there.
Colleen and Nicole, did you have anything else to add?
Other than we would be grateful for consideration for some of the, one of the open street or play street permitting
Yeah.
process.
Who should we follow up with and coordinate on that? Because a week ago, the Department of Transportation had a handy form. Today, as of today or sometime since then, there's basically just a link you send a web inquiry into the Manhattan DOT commissioner.
That's great to hear. Raquel in our main office has expressed a huge amount of interest in working with the permitting process, as well as our assistant principal, Regina. I'd be very happy to put you in touch with both of them.
Yeah, that.
Absolutely.
If you could connect us, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you for the consideration. We appreciate it.
Okay. I am going to, let's see, I'm not going to, because I'm clearly having technical issues. Okay, let's get to the next topic is our second topic, which still applies to all, is reducing the digital divide. See if I can get a, we kind of had a laundry list of, let's see if I can get this smaller. Okay. Okay. So the city week announced that it accelerated its internet master plan. It has all sorts of wonderful details, but virtually none of that will be ready. So a number of committee members offered today on a bunch of short-term solutions, whether it's mobile hotspots on school buses, for schools that have with at the schools, having guest accounts in all the DOE buildings. They're able to stay there and complete their assignments after school. Real them with priority access to students for school hours. Funding free and low-cost broadband programs with internet providers. Optimum's and the best that Spectrum is offering is $15 a month. And which seems, and also that seems like a pretty low speed. $15 may not sound like a lot if you're trying to make ends meet. That's another $15 you don't have. District 2, most students got a remote learning device, but the DOE to purchase LTE-enabled laptop broadband problem. I mean, LTE-enabled iPads and not laptops. We all know that middle school and high school students in particular need to be creating content to go with the laptop. So I wanted to sort of throw it out to this group suggestions in terms of reducing the digital divide. I'm going to stop the screen share. Keen? Keen, did you raise your hand? You need to unmute yourself.
No, Betty has a question.
I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Betty. Go ahead.
I was wondering if it might be more cost effective for the DOE to get keyboard attachments that can connect to tablets versus replacing all of the tablets with computers. Because if I understand that most work is completed more easily with a keyboard, but I think that that might serve a similar function without you needing the cost of purchasing.
Absolutely. I think for people who already have the iPads, let's just get them a keyboard with money. So, Bob?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in all this, but I just wanted to jump back before we talk about access to learning. In my mind, and I always have two questions, and I think parents need to start thinking about this. One is, you know, I've recommended to a lot of parents this summer, they wanted our camp to do a virtual summer camp, and it just wasn't in the cards for us. We don't do, that's not what we do. And, you know, there's no funding for it. We couldn't make any money on it. So I referred people to the New York Public Library as a summer program. And I'm just wondering, in the future, as DOE starts thinking about this, A, how a teacher is going to take care of their students and do online learning at the same time. And my preference would have always been that the DOE should establish an office of digital learning and administer it centrally in case, you know, and figure this out like the public libraries are doing. And before we even get to how kids get online, which is also very spotty, but has there been any discussion of that overall? Sorry to take you off track, but you know, it was just really a mess these past 3 months. And we also did online learning. And I kept saying after school for DYCD that funded us, I said, what for? I mean, that's not what we do. And, you know, and that was a very objective view where, you know, oh, well, why Manhattan Youth should we fund you if you don't do online learning? But later in my career, I say to myself, well, what's best for the children? And how do you give, and what's best for teachers and personnel?
I personally don't have any experience with it, but it's my understanding that the summer school does have some internet, some common content that's being delivered through the 10-year-old. So I'm a little skeptical, and 34% of the students haven't been able to log in. Yeah. But I only know what I've read. I haven't personally experienced. So I think that's great in concept. Unfortunately, everything is very decentralized.
Yeah, and that
each sixth grade math teacher creates their own lesson, delivers it to their kids, whereas the centralized and the teacher's time being spent on small group breakout sessions.
Yeah.
Barbara, do you have any thoughts? I need to put you on the spot on that, or? You need to unmute yourself.
I'm just startled that there are no, I don't know if I'm startled, that there's no direction from DOE. It seems like everyone is floundering and doing their own thing. I think I should know better, I guess, but I'm still amazed that that's happening. And that schools have to just plan their own. There's no coordination. And I think Bob's suggestion of an office that's just located just for digital learning seems essential to me. I mean, there's certain things that just seem essential. That something should be coming from the top, and then schools design what's best for them. But there doesn't seem to be any guidance of number of children in a class. I mean, is the only thing that's sent out was the space, the number of the distancing?
What was sent out were detailed to them. They're detailed. I'll put it in the chat. There were detailed scenarios. I'll call it 2 groups of, you know, taking a class and breaking it into 2 groups, 3 groups, or worst case 4 groups. And then schools would, you know, basically have, you know, figure out what the options are for, you know, which one would apply to them, basically based on how big the building is, how large the classrooms are, and how many students attend. I have heard from the District 2 superintendent that almost every school will be on the 2 cohort.
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
I hear that most schools will be on the 2 cohort model.
What's that?
That's basically 2 groups of, you know, and you would basically, the kids would go to school, you know, 2 to 3 days a week. I just put in the chat a link to the Google Slides the DOE shared last week, and it has a detailed plan for these.
So their detailed plan also takes care of health conditions, sanitizing, everything.
No, just a schedule plan. I shouldn't say it's like 8 PowerPoint slides. It's not very much.
I don't get
Colleen or Nicole for PS3, do you think you'll be able to do the 2 cohort plan?
I believe that our principal did mention a 3 cohort plan, primarily due to our larger student body size.
Yeah.
So, but please keep in mind, nothing has been set in, stone. I believe the principal has to submit the plan to the DOE by the end of July. And when I say plan, while we were given some structure for how many people can be in the building or in a room, there is nothing else to guide us, including how many hand washing stations do you need for 710 students plus 100 staff? How do you work with your wonderful custodians and talk to them about this enormous burden that they face? And of course, we don't know if there's any additional funding available. Sorry to paint the dour picture, but it's—
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Take another stab at sharing my screen because I want people to, so. All right, this is a model 1 class, and you divide it into 2 groups. I'm going to say, let's say you have let's say we go to the PS3 model. There's only 16 kids in the class, which we know is not the case. 4 of them choose to parent for 100% remote learning. And then you would have group A would go to school 3 days one week and 2 days the next group B. And group D is the remote group, and they're basically, and then the other option is a 3-person group. You take, let's say you have 30 kids, 6 of them choose to go remote. You group A, B, and C with 8 kids in them each. And the first week, group A, 1 day, 1 out of 5 days the second week, and 2 out of 5 days the third week, which is pretty horrendous from a parent's perspective and a kid's perspective, just consistency. Option where it just and you rotate multiple days, and where you have, group 5 options. I won't take it. And then you have rotating, so it's sort of grouped, and then the school can come up with an exception and do whatever they want. And sometime around this week, parents can sign up for remote only. I know several parents who are thinking, and they have until August 7th to sign up for remote learning. So that will drive, if you have a school with 700 kids and remote learning, then you have to spread the 600, and that's the tricky part. Has a summary of what parents thought in the survey, and key tenets is it talks about the hand hygiene, but it doesn't talk about how you get enough sinks in there to wash up, and behaviors, but not operationally how that's. So, but the link is in the chat, so you guys can take a look at it. So, Akila, you had your hand raised, Akila?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to comment about like PS3, who also has high numbers, and we have a lot of elementary schools that have high numbers in our district. And it is most likely those schools would be in the 3 cohort model just by the sheer numbers of students that they have, which means, like you said, they're going to school 1 day a week, 2 days a week, and then 1 day a week, and then 2 days a week. Okay, so they're basically remote learning 3 to 4 days every week, which means that the majority of their schooling is remote learning. Very small amount of their schooling is in person. So, you know, I'm really trying to think critically about what that means in terms of what kinds of recommendations we could make to these schools. Because if you're going to be educating a kid 4 days a week with remote learning, the question of making the digital platform more equitable and really making it more robust and a much better platform than it was before for learning feels to me more pressing. It feels to me very pressing in this time, because these kids need an education. They're going to be learning online for the majority of their week. It almost feels like our resources would be better spent making these platforms usable for kids with learning differences, making these platforms usable for kids, and maybe making more of a recommendation to support principals in deciding, like, there will always be a smaller amount of children that need in-person things, and maybe the decision for in-person instruction based on need, and really making the online instruction a much better tool. I'd love to hear, you know, anyone's thoughts on that or reflections.
Thumbs up. Hi. I'm going to say I don't know enough about what my child's school other than seeing a schedule where it's constantly changing. Good for most children. They like. I also will add that remote learning was mediocre at best. In the teachers, there just wasn't enough time to get it up and running. Well, I have heard that the remote learning, it'll be so a lot of the, you know, there'll be the stuff that happens in the building will be mostly asynchronous, which is self-guided self-study, and that basically creates greater inequities because it parents who can help their child can hire people to help their child, or can hire tutors. The academic happening with the schools. I really think that the city needs to build on something.
I didn't hear you there, Janine. What was
I
that
said
last?
I early, and Kate agrees with you as well. Bob, and then just unmute yourself, please.
Okay. Let me try.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Mute. I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
While I have like Rich on the line and other people, you know, I'm thinking about kids being stuck in apartments with computers and online learning. And I think some of these community providers, whether or not it's Manhattan Youth or it's DUS or it's the Downtown Little League or other things, maybe they could revise their offerings a little bit and do things during the school day that would allow a kid to get out of the house. You know, it wouldn't be totally like, oh, my child doesn't play soccer, but it might be a little more broad to be some fresh air stuff. And for parents and for children who are stuck inside, maybe before 3 o'clock, there could be gym classes offered in the community at like Pier 40, where parents come down and, you know, an hour and a half on the field for a child a day or 3 days a week might be really good. And so I think we should start looking at having community providers take the lead on some in face-to-face programs also. I'm up here in Maine and I've been watching Little League baseball every night, and the kids are having a great time. schools are closed, but the leagues are operating. And so that's something to consider.
You're saying on days they're not in class, they're not in the classroom, you're saying?
Well, the kids are not going to class online. You know, I don't know. There's no attendance requirements. I don't think the DOE has even taken attendance. I think just to offer it before 3 o'clock, even on a, you know, do it a little at first and see what the people think. And then, because we're thinking of doing something in August, actually, very small cohort of kids, 6, 12 kids, you know, safe as safe can be, and just letting them get out there and run and see each other. And, and I think,
I think there could be, there could be fall baseball at Saturday morning. It could be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 5.
Yes.
Or even something. You still, most of these, a lot of these programs run with parent volunteers, but there's probably more parents with flexibility, whether they like it or not now.
Would have to change the model a little bit. Everybody would have to change their model a little bit, but Pier 40 fields are a huge resource, and I know Dusk does deliver, you know, comprehensive care. It's not foreign to them. It's not like the Downtown Little League, which is a parent organization getting the parents out there and running the league, which should happen. But there are other community providers that could bring people into the outdoors, bring kids into the outdoors. And that should be a long-term goal also.
Yeah, I think that's a great. Paul, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that about 2 months ago, I was on a meeting with PS3 parents and teachers, and the teachers expressed concern that they do not have the computer and remote learning power in their homes, and you know, and the broadband that they need to teach. So as much as we want to get the devices and expand broadband to the children, the teacher, we can't do it without the teachers also having it. And that
the teachers
need
this too.
The teachers need this too, and that you know also includes computers that can really support the lessons. I know an art teacher in particular was concerned because a lot of the programs she was doing, her computer just didn't support a lot of the programs and lessons she was doing.
So the teachers, if they're going to teach, need the technology tools as well.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yes, I have a question for the PS3 moms.
Yep.
Nicole, Colleen, I agree with Akila's point about the focus should be more on remote learning. Are the teachers expressing in these focus groups a need for professional development around remote learning? Because I mean, when COVID started, at the start of this pandemic, they only had a few days in which to come in to get instruction, and then they had to do this over 3 months, and it wasn't enough time to gather all the materials that they needed to be on the same page with each other's lesson plan or whatever. Are they expressing any of this in the focus groups?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm sorry, Colleen. I think they did express that to me in a parent-teacher meeting, that they really needed some more professional development, and that they were very much open to learning new tools.
Okay.
I agree with Nicole. We didn't yet get to remote learning in the meeting this morning. You know, we're sort of going over guidelines for things, but that is an excellent question. And I certainly more support, especially professional development, only helps everybody out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And that requires funding, right? Because and you don't know if the budget is out as yet, correct?
Correct. As of today, our principal had not received any information about a budget yet.
Okay, thank you.
That's good to know. And I'm just gonna, since you guys are on the, I'm gonna just do a shout out. I had a friend with twins who just finished 3rd grade at PS3, and relative to other stories, those teachers did an amazing job and they compartmentalized it. So one person did math and one person did social studies, and they worked together. And I think that became a much better product. So I'm going to share that with the PS3 team. I don't know who those teachers are, but the parents loved it. Colleen, you had something to add?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Stephanie, the teacher.
Forgot to lower your hand.
Yeah.
Stephanie had something to say.
Stephanie?
Yeah, just from a teacher's perspective, I think with the professional development, in terms of it's not just tools.
Stephanie, you cut out for a second.
Sorry. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In terms of professional development, it's not.
Now we can't hear you.
Janine, I think that might be
Stephanie,
you.
do you want to type it into the chat and we'll read it for some reason, or because your picture's already
Janine.
off?
Janine, we hear her fine. I think it's your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you froze, Janine.
So everyone else can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's my problem. I'm going to turn my video off.
Okay. I was trying to say, in terms of the professional development, it's not only the tools, the tech tools that we need to learn, but it's also the structure of the lesson. Because obviously online, like what is considered a lesson is very different. And I think also teachers would appreciate the professional development coming from actual experts in because while our administration can certainly share with us any information that they learn from wherever they get their professional development, they actually don't have the experience with remote learning.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm going to quickly, I just want to, we earlier had Charlie Anderson from Assemblymember Glick's office, and we have Gigi Leon, who's the Chief of Staff to Councilmember Margaret Chin. Welcome, Gigi. She's here for our 3rd topic, but I'm glad you're hearing this. Schools need money for technology, professional development, and to figure this all out. I see Valerie, I'll go to you, and then Matt.
Thanks. I have a question for Stephanie, the teacher. What's the right balance of synchronous versus asynchronous teaching, learning during this kind of remote period? What's the ideal, and I guess it would take funding to get there, but I would just love to know from your perspective, what's the ideal balance there?
I think it's really hard to say. I think it really depends on the student population. I was doing synchronous every day, but that's because of it worked with the students I had, and I teach high school. It just fit what my students were capable of doing. But I think it really depends on the school population. I think the live synchronous interaction is important because when I solicited feedback from my students, there were definitely a number of students who mentioned that in other classes where there wasn't so much, where everything was asynchronous, they struggled because even though the work may seem like the same amount of work that they would normally get during regular school time, they had to teach everything themselves, so that ended up taking much longer to complete the work. And so it was very overwhelming for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Synchronous is better. Matt, you had a question or comment?
I had a comment on ISPs and internet, if you don't mind, Janine, going
Sure.
like So first, Janine, if you could run our school system for like the past 5 years, I think we would be in a much, much better shape. Two, to Stephanie, and I'm not sure if there are other teachers, when I get this depressed about a situation, I'm pretty depressed about what I think to be a cataclysmic event for public school students and teachers and parents and everybody. I follow Mr. Rogers' advice and look for the helpers. So thank you to you guys. But third, obviously there's the short and intermediate term solutions that we're looking for in terms of putting Wi-Fi on buses and kind of the stopgaps. For me, on a longer term horizon, I'm not sure we want to talk about this or include it, the idea that internet companies are allowed to operate somewhere in New York and not forced to provide services in what is obviously in my opinion, it's effectively redlining for ISPs. But I would love to see a longer term solution presented, or at least a demand that there is broadband everywhere. Because I know in the report it talks about broadband being at least as important as internet or as electricity in the the 20th century. It's way more. So thank you, Janine, for the res, and that's it.
Okay. We are going to go on to our third topic, and and obviously if people come up with an idea that's back to the earlier ones, we'd be still happy to hear it. I'm going to share my screen one more time once I get the right page up. Let's see. Okay, I think I finally got it almost right. Okay, so our third topic is about the new schools. And we know the money is tight, so we just want to keep an eye on what's going on with the new schools that our community has, in the pipeline. First, want to talk about Hudson Square. So in 2013, Hudson Square was rezoned. Trinity Real Estate, Trinity Church, requested the rezoning, and it took a former manufacturing hotel district and converted it into a mixed-use residential opportunity to become a mixed-use residential neighborhood. Office space had always been as of right. The plan called for 3,000 new apartments with a zoning bonus if affordable housing is built, and Trinity committed to build the core and shell of a 444-seat public elementary school, as well as public gym space in the base of 2 Hudson Square. And 2 Hudson Square is right here. That's Canal Street. And on the southern end of our community district, and that adjacent to Duarte Square Park. Let's see. Go to the next slide. So the public school commitment, currently the Hudson Square School, and that's what it's referred to as. It used to be, we've used different names over time. Trinity, there's another Trinity school down in the financial district, so we're referring to this as the Hudson Square School. In the capital plan, it's a $50 million project because when a developer builds a core and shell, they basically pay for half the school. So the balance, 45 out of 50 million is funded in the most recent capital plan that was updated in February 2020, right before the pandemic. And the date in that plan was for construction starting in July 2022. We know that the developer has been having conversations with the school construction authority. We've initially had this meeting date on the calendar over a month ago, and then the developer, there's some aspects changing so that they weren't ready to come today. We still wanted to sort of put a line in the sand and talk about these schools. This is a picture on the right of a rendering of the building that was in YIMBY in May. Trinity, which is a real estate management company essentially, has a ground lease with DeConnick and Nuveen, a joint venture, and that joint venture would actually do the development of a 26-story office tower, and that was released in the press in December. I just want to, in 2012, Trinity came to Community Board 2 and showed a rendering of the school, which you see here on the left at 2 Hudson Square. It showed a sort of a building with a sort of a carve out, as you can see here, for a, with a ground floor place, sort of kindergarten play space adjacent to the park across the street. The new renderings, again, these are just the renderings in YIMBY, not presented by the developer, have a building taking up the entire footprint of the property. So getting rid of essentially this ground floor play space and having a rooftop play space. And this is just what was released in the press. So we look forward for Trinity coming back to Community Board 2 and sort of giving us detailed plans in the future. I just also want to talk about the gym commitment. Within the shell of the building, the DOE has the option to build expanded recreation facilities, which would be a 6,300 square foot double height gym, a 3,500 square foot assembly space, a 2,100 square foot multi-purpose space, and a separate entrance on Varick Street. And the letter and the details of these commitments are on the CB2 website, which I wanted to put in there. And before we go on, does anyone have any questions on the Hudson Square School? And because I'm sharing my screen, Patricia, if there are any questions, if you could please call on people. Okay. I'm going to go to the Bleecker School then. And then
No,
we'll
Michael Markowitz has a question.
Oh, Michael? Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering if you had any information on the gymatorium concept, and that might help inform the conversation a little bit. Like 75 Morton, for those of you who don't know, there's a lot of backstory with whether we'd have a separate gym and auditorium, and we ended up with a big gymatorium with some other modifications. Thanks.
We do not have any details on that at this point, but I do think it was a gymatorium that was proposed, but because there would be this public gym space, but it would only be open to the public after school hours, it's also a backdoor way to get the gym into the school separate from the auditorium.
And we have one other question from Bob Townley.
Bob?
Yeah, that's the same comment as Michael. When it was first built, we had lobbied against gymatoriums citywide, and we heard that the school construction authority was sort of abandoning that concept. It just doesn't work. And but the additional space, as you outline here, the double height gym, multi-purpose assembly room, which is huge, and you know, and you got to make sure they're not using any of that for a lunchroom. You have to hold the developers to that commitment, because as you just said, they sort of changed it a little bit on the play space outside, moved the kids upstairs. So it's really important that the commitment of that space at 2 Hudson holds true. It seems very far down the line. It's hard to believe anyone in this environment is going to build a building, but they will, and we'll come
Eventually
back.
they will.
Yeah. So that's really a nice amenity for the community.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the Bleecker School. Last February, we had a large meeting. I know Gigi helped host this with Councilmember Chin's office. And we have a Bleecker School FAQ. There's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/Bleecker FAQ. And that should not have a space in it. Nothing has changed since then, and everything has changed. But nothing has changed relative to the Bleecker School. The city has an option to build 100,000 square feet, a new DOE K-8 public school, basically on the corner of Bleecker and LaGuardia, very close to the Community Board 2 main office on NYU's campus. And currently the option expires unless the school is funded on December 31st. In November, when the DOE updated its capital plan, they added language that the DOE intends to exercise its option to build that school. In September, CB2's most recent resolution on this site, we basically supported implementation. It was a resolution related to dyslexia education, and that the Bleecker School could be a possible site for the creation of a public school program for dyslexic students. And in December, all of the elected officials jointly wrote a letter to the DOE in support of exploring the possibility of creating a DOE public school program for dyslexic students at this site. Gigi, I know we spoke earlier today. I just wanted to give you a chance to, if you want to add anything to this. Gigi Lee is the Chief of Staff to Councilmember Chin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks, Janine, for inviting me. I'll just start very broadly to say that with the budget shortfall that the city is experiencing, OMB stands for the Office of Management and Budget, which essentially is, you can think about them as the city's accountants. They put a hold on all of the school construction authority projects citywide. And the reason they gave us for that is because they really wanted to reassess priorities and look at price tags throughout the city in all of their commitments as schools and building schools is a large portion of the capital budget plan, right? And so the budget was passed at the end of the month in June, and in conversations with the school construction authority as well as OMB, we now know that a small number of those holds have been lifted, and they seem to fall under two major categories. One category is for capital, first capital projects that are near completion, right? That they're so close to being done that it makes no sense to just stop and continue leaving just the small remainder that's left. And then the other category, which also makes sense, is really about construction projects where they're taking up a lot of space that those schools need in order to open in September and allow for adequate social distancing. So for example, projects that maybe used 2 or 3 classrooms as swing space for either storage or other uses in order to assist in the completion of the construction, those are now moving forward because we need every classroom, every gym, every cafeteria to allow for as much space as possible for when schools open. And so we know that each particular site now is being looked at very closely. Timelines are being looked at. Estimates for cost are being reevaluated, and there have to be some adjustments for this sort of several month delay because of COVID. So the council member is keenly aware of how important it is to continue construction, particularly because phase 1 did allow for construction sites to open, and that has been a month or more now. So the council member, along with several other council members, including Councilmember Traeger, who is the chair of the Education Committee at the City Council, signed a joint letter I can drop it into the chat box, and I'll also email a copy to Janine and the CB2 office so you guys have a copy, that really urges both the Office of Management and Budget as well as the School Construction Authority to really continue in their commitment for all of the school construction projects, which we have several of in Lower Manhattan in Council District 1. So that's generally where we are with the School Construction Authority. Specifically around Bleecker School, you know, ever since the forum that we had, there hasn't been conversation about next steps. I think that we intend to you know, continue to engage in those conversations as there is a deadline here. The last time I spoke to NYU and the School Construction Authority about the Bleecker School, they did indicate that there may be some creative interpretation of sort of the language around what it means to meet the commitment to start construction, right? Like, if we're starting the design process, does that count as starting the construction? Can we be a little bit more flexible in that in that interpretation, as long as there is money, like real money, set aside? So we are looking at creative ways to meet the language requirements. And then I think we see no reason that planning for new schools should need to stop and continue to move forward. We know that there are holds on other capital projects. For example, for public housing, all of those capital projects, same thing. A lot of them have been put on hold, with select projects being greenlit again. However, the planning and design processes for that are in the pike, those are actually happening with NYCHA and their design team. So we feel like those processes should continue to move forward, and that we will continue to push for those to move forward because they can be. So I think that's sort of the overarching update. I'm happy to answer any questions.
There's a question in the chat from Bob Townley. Bob, do you want to unmute yourself to ask it? All right, I'll ask it. He wanted to know, would we lose options that arose from the deal at Bleecker or Trinity? Are you there, Bob? Can you answer?
Here I am. I'm unmuted.
Hi, Bob.
Hi. You know, we have the same issue downtown. But the Trinity's place on Canal Street, Hudson Square, and also the NYU deal, no deal, if the Department of Education did not go forward, we know at Trinity that Trinity's building the core and shell,
right?
So we would be sacrificing a lot of money if the DOE did not build that school, and then at NYU, I don't know what the deal was. Were they going to build out the core and shell also?
No, the DOE for the Bleecker School, they would only they would provide the land, but the land is very valuable. The DOE would need to build the entire core and shell.
I got it. And at Trinity, the land, it would be the core and the shell would be donated.
Yeah, so it's I sort of think akin it to, it's like it's half a school.
Right. Okay. So potentially, if DOE didn't go through with this, in both instances, they'd be sacrificing a lot of money.
Sure. And look, we're not getting any indication from the school construction authority or the city that they're walking away from any of these projects, right? We're not at that point. I think particularly with Trinity, there is a very hard and fast timeline because of the history and because of the future plans of, what PS 150 would look like, where those kids are going to go, if they're going to have to go to PECSLIP instead. And we worked out a timeline and a plan with a lot of moving pieces that really where a strict timeline needs to be followed, right? So right now, the question is, can we meet that timeline? Is it going to be an extra cost because we've lost 3 or 4 months of this time? And what would that cost look like? Do the contractors even have enough workers to work overtime to meet that timeline, right? These are all sort of the logistical questions that have to be figured out and answered and reassessed. But we have not gotten any indication that the city is walking away from any of the projects, from any of the SCA projects in Council District 1.
Great. And I just want to jump in because there's 2 Trinity schools. There's the Trinity school that we're going to call the Trinity school that's right by the Rector Street subway station. And that is almost finished. That's the one that Gigi was just referring to. And then there is the school that we're going to call the Hudson Square School, which is the one at 2 Hudson Square. Just want to make sure we get our projects.
Yeah,
they both are tied to Trinity. Keen?
Yeah, and that was the one I was talking about since we're on a community board to call. I was talking about the Hudson Square School where the deal is quite nice. The core and shell are being delivered to the school. So that's the one I was wondering if that project has not been approved. Project, it would be a tremendous loss because they're going to give us the school. The other question I had about NYU is there has NYU shown any? Are they going to put? I hate to use this word, but are they going to stomp on the community and the city? And have they indicated that in December they would pull out of this deal just because of a pandemic and the city being in tough? That would be a shame if they didn't.
I don't think anyone has gone back to. We have not. CB2 has not had any discussions with NYU regarding the Bleecker School post-pandemic. And in a letter about a year ago, they basically, or two years ago, they said this is our last extension. I'm hoping that we can move forward with the Bleecker School by the option date, but rest assured CB2 will, if for some reason it needs to be delayed because of the pandemic, we will fight for that tooth and nail.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob, I think also, in my last conversations with NYU, they really see the ball being in the city's court because they want to see an indication from the city that they're serious. And by that, they mean they want to see money. They want to see very specific money set aside for that actual location, and for there to be, substantial conversations around design and model, student population, all the things that CB2 have been very active and a very important partner with all of the overlapping electeds to really push for. So it's clear to SCA, it's clear to NYU that this is a very important school, that everyone here really has a vested interest in moving along. And so I don't think that anyone wants to walk away from it. It's just right now meeting that deadline in a way that meets all the legal obligations as they're outlined.
My turn.
Walk in someone else's shoes. What's the downside if NYU gave an extra extension of a year? Why wouldn't they do that?
Well, we're not ready to ask for that yet, but I'm going to turn it over to Keen, who has her hand raised.
Right. I mean, I'm so happy, Gigi, that you're saying they're trying to find a creative way. I'm sure there is a creative way, and I'm sure that you and Margaret can figure it out. I mean, it does seem like there's a political wiggle room that you can push. And I think that's where we have to, that's the key. So I'm happy to hear what you're saying. And I want everybody to realize that that land is worth very big money. So if we miss that December deadline, we give back a lot of land that should go to school children and won't. And all our taxes, I mean, it's a crucial thing. So Gigi, I'm really happy to hear you're saying there is a creative way, and it's also a political way you think it's going to happen, right? Is that what you're saying?
We're gonna do everything we can to make it happen. There is a backup commitment that if for whatever reason, you know, we're backed into a corner and the school is not an option, that there is, I believe it's 10,000 square feet that have to be set aside for a community facility of some sort. If it's not a school, it could be something else.
Right, that's what scares me, because that, of course, is an easy way to get out of the commitment to the children.
Right. But we have been very clear that the school is what we want.
Wonderful, wonderful. So please make sure it happens. I'm sure you can somehow.
There's a lot of people working together on it, including this committee. So I want to thank you for your committee's leadership and your board's leadership as well.
Whoops. I just want to add that Keen was saying is a lot of money. You know, the number we've been using is a very conservative number, even post-pandemic. That the land that where the city has the option to build is worth at least $65 million. So it's if for some reason that school isn't built, it's essentially a transfer of $65 million from New York City taxpayers to NYU, and that's not something we want to give away. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. At this time, I'm going to close the public session. We are Gigi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. I do want to just highlight, since there's a couple, we spent the first hour talking about the need for finding additional school space and the need for schools to plan. The schools are getting very little guidance from the DOE about how to roll out some kind of mixed, you know, split schedule or cohort-based schedule learning, and kids are going to be out of school for a significant amount of the time based on the DOE plans released last week. So we need to have funding for after-school programs, which could be running during school, childcare, technology for teachers, technology for students, and we'll be sending hopefully some resolutions your way.
Great. And we're also, we also check in very routinely with the UFT to also get their perspective from their teachers, guidance counselors, and other members about kind of their experience and what their needs are, and sort of the guidance that they are or aren't getting from the DOE, so that we can be better educated and better advocates for our schools. But we will be on the lookout for your resolutions.
Thank you. Okay, the public is welcome to stay. I'm going, Patricia, can you, Bob, you're welcome to listen, but you can also go back to vacation or happy hour at this point.
Yeah, no, thank you
for joining us, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, I shared, and I think we have a number of attendees staying on. I shared with this committee 2 resolutions that you have via email. You can also access them via somebody's got a beeping sound, so if you could just mute yourself. So our first resolution that we shared with everyone is a resolution on open streets for schools and the addition of school sites to support the safe reopening of New York City schools. And we heard a lot of ideas tonight that we can add to this resolution. And I guess my question is, should this be one or two resolutions? Because, and I guess you could argue both ways, but the outdoor space is more of a DOT issue and the indoor space is a DOE DYCD issue. I don't know if this committee has any thoughts on that.
I'm sorry, do you mean the two resolutions would be what?
The first resolution, I'm gonna put for those of you, hold on, let me get a link.
Carter, you should know this. You should know which agency or whether it should be one or two.
Oh.
You have an opinion?
Here is a link to a Google document for the first resolution. For those of you who don't have it in front of you, and it is a resolution in support of open streets for schools and the addition of school sites to support the safe reopening of New York City schools. This is a version of a resolution that I should say Bob Townley drafted, and I sort of revised it a little bit for our community board. But it focuses on outdoor space, which is open streets for schools or play streets. And possibly to that we can add parks contracts. And then we have indoor space, which is looking at acquiring either on a temporary or permanent basis, a laundry list of spaces, which including, not-for-profit organizations, possibly some small museums, churches. There's a lot of unused spaces right now. And the question is, can any of these be repurposed to provide space for students, particularly if they're adjacent to schools or if they can be rented directly by the city or on a low-cost basis by not-for-profit providers who can provide opportunities for students who are basically could only be in school 1 to 2 days a week. So we have an education crisis, we have a physical movement recreation crisis, and we have a childcare crisis as a result of the DOE's current plans.
Amy has a question.
Amy, go ahead. Amy?
Can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
Gosh, I tonight. Sorry about it. I'm just not with it tonight. It's not a question, but unless there's a technical reason why you shouldn't combine them, I think it's good to combine them because the two groups are going to have to work together, right? You can't be
That's a good point.
Interspace and outdoor space separately. It's got to be a cohesive plan. So I would keep them together unless there's a reason why you wouldn't.
Yeah, that's good. I buy that.
Okay. And I did put Our Lady of Pompeii in here. We do know some parents are trying to save that school, so we may, I feel like it's a little early to be suggesting that, but I do know that the DOE is always in conversations with the Archdiocese, and they definitely are in conversations with the Archdiocese and all the schools that they announced to close last week.
Keen has a question. Go ahead.
Keen? Yes.
Bob's idea of a construction site was a wonderful idea. Can we put that in?
Yeah, let me reach out to Bob and get a better understanding to how to describe that. Basically taking over the streets.
24 hours.
Yeah. And I know, I'm just trying to think of, where that could work and where it might not work. But I think we should just suggest it Because there's going to be some places it will work.
One of the
better than
challenges of taking the streets over 24/7 is that there's much more likely to have pushback from.
Well, that might work with the trailers. I mean, I think of on Charlton Street where that building's being built on Charlton and Greenwich. And basically half the street has been taken over by construction for over a year on both of those streets. So that's the trailer concept or something else. You know, so it's not necessarily completely, you know, inconceivable, because we give away massive space to construction permits. You know, our Parks Committee got DeSalvio Playground renovated, and, you know, still 20+% of that playground is covered in scaffolding because of the building next door.
Yeah, I was just thinking more if you allow the street to be open at nights for local stuff, you know, the way the streets are closed from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Same thing, you know, might be less objection. There's also like Greenwich Avenue, you know, that could be made one way. It doesn't have to be made, have to be two ways. And that's right adjacent to the school. And then, you know, could be closed during the day, opened at night, whatever. I think the buses only run one way there, right? They like come down.
Greenwich, are you thinking north-south Greenwich Street or Greenwich Avenue by PS 41?
Greenwich Avenue by PS 41. That was just,
yeah.
It's a truck route and it's a bus route, but I think it's only south or east. So you could conceivably take that over for exactly, I mean, that's just one of the public schools. Just
yeah.
As a,
okay.
Can I make another suggestion for a possible space?
Yes.
There's a lot of event space. I know this in my work. There's a lot of event space all over the place. And particularly some of the, it wouldn't necessarily affect our area so much, but I know a lot of Lower East Side where there isn't much room. There's all kinds of event spaces there that there are no events happening, okay? They're going empty. And so, I mean, they might even be willing to take a small amount or something like that. So those are great spaces, and they have all the facilities that you need.
They have kitchens, they have bathrooms.
They have everything. So you could add that in there. The other thing you might be able to add in is, and this, I'm just thinking about my day working in events, that a lot of, if you're talking about construction, I think Akila's mic is on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah. Okay.
There, I've gone to endless events in buildings that are under construction or renovated that are still rough, right? So they don't have every kind of, you know, all the sheet wall enough, but they're totally functional. They've got everything else, and I've gone to great events at those places. So there's all kinds of hidden space that are not really obvious, but I would definitely add event space, because that stuff, what they do is they rent it out for events.
That's a great idea. Okay. I'm thinking that we directly reach out to at least the public schools in the public schools in our community, and specifically ask them if they have sites in mind. You know, if they've contemplated some sites, you know, near their schools. So each community knows their neighborhood really, really well, particularly for the elementary schools and the middle school.
It'd be great to find out more just about their basic requirements and if temporary facilities meet them, like the hand washing stations, bathrooms, because then with a little bit more knowledge about that, people can have a
Well, I think what we could find out is the basic requirements pre-pandemic, because as the schools have told us, they still don't have what you need in terms of, they don't even know what the requirements are. They get a PowerPoint says that you need to have adequate hand hygiene, but it doesn't say a ratio of sinks to students or anything like that. Okay, any other questions or comments on this resolution?
I wonder if it's just something a little more aggressive, just in terms of or a little more emotional about it. Like,
Yeah.
Kids are going to, without more space, more kids are going to get sick, or without more space, more kids are going to go through the challenges of not being able to be in school. Or I also think there's going to be a big difference between what the public school experience is and what the private schools are going to do, because I think the private schools are going to push to get kids in. They're going to find ways, they're going to bend rules, and the parents are going to force them to make sure the kids are in school 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, and I don't, I think it's varying by school. I've definitely been reaching out to different places and people. I mean, I have a friend I know there's parents, I'm not sure who's on still, but I'm not gonna say who it is, but there's, I think all of our attendees, a few attendees last, a friend with kids at PS3 who bought a very inexpensive house upstate and is gonna send the kids to a small private school there, but that school will also only be in person 2 days a week, but the other 2 days they'll have synchronous instruction, which is, the woman who was on the high school teacher, I think that is who was giving her students synchronous instruction. I mean, I think that is the exception more than the rule, that she was doing that every day. I wish she were my children's teacher.
I was talking about, I have a colleague in the office whose kids go to Grace Church Elementary School, and their parents are forcing, they're going to be 5 days a week. At worst, they'll be 4. And they're going to find a way to do it, and they're going to find space to do it. And the parents are not going to accept that they're not going to do it. And they're a private school, and they
will just rent the space to make it happen.
Or whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah, and St. Luke's is going to be every day for at least through 6th grade, and maybe every other day for 7th and 8th grade. And they basically brought some consultant in. Poly Prep, which has a unique situation. What's going on there? Which has a campus. Does somebody have, what is going on? I have an echo here. They are basically renting tents and on the campus. Don't know what's going on here.
Can I add to your comment about making it more emotional, but mentioning the kids? I would also mention the teachers, as we've noticed over the weekend with some op-eds. Teachers feel that, and I think rightly so, that they're not mentioned enough in these kinds of things as far as the risks they're taking. So I think it's good to mention both equally. And I would not have thought of that if I hadn't seen all the remarks this week. And things like that.
Whereas we've been texting back and forth. We do have teachers, but I agree. It needs to have more punch to this, because we sort of, have and maybe we talk about the inequities between the, public and private schools. And then I'm going to call it the shadow private schools, which are, people hiring tutors and, basically arbitraging, the system and getting what they need for their child and then leaving the rest of the kids in the dust. And it's really an equity issue. Okay.
I dropped the other reso in the chat for the panelists.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Patricia. So the second resolution is, pull that up. It's a resolution in support of immediate solutions to reduce the digital divide. And, because I think obviously the mayor's under pressure. The chief technology officer's office came out with that big announcement last week. And frankly, that does nothing for, kids who need, right now, kids could easily be remote, 3 to 4 days a week. And possibly 100% of the time, and without internet access. So right now the DOE is purchasing iPads because there isn't broadband access, so people can use the data minutes on those iPads. And Betty, I love your idea of purchasing keyboards for the students who've already received the iPads, particularly for the older students. But from what we've, it's even paying $15 a month for the Internet Assist program is really tough for a lot of families. I think Patricia's idea and Bob's idea of getting the libraries on board and having priority access for students who need to complete it's not even homework, to do their schoolwork, and extending the low-cost broadband programs through the school year, and not just for another 2 months or 3 months.
To what extent is, I mean, if we're talking about remote learning being the main mode of instruction for most students for next year, to what extent does access to an education fall under federal law?
I don't know.
Because I think there's a legal argument to be made about not having access to the internet and therefore not having access to anywhere between 60 to 90% of your education. I think that having anything less than internet access in every child's home is a violation of their right to an access to an education. And maybe there's a way, maybe we can talk to the ACLU.
I like that idea.
A good point Matt made earlier is these are pretty heavily regulated industries, if I'm not mistaken. And is that under state law that they're regulated? I think it is. And, is that something that our state electeds could chime in, or is that something that could be changed along these
To
lines?
Akila's thing, the federal government does not guarantee the education. It's a state law that every child is supposed to get a sound basic education. That's a New York state law.
Okay.
So we can.
I was just chiming in on the other side of, the regulated industries have to provide sort of like, access in remote areas.
Right.
And have to spend extra money. So, is there a way that could be addressed by our state elected officials?
Yeah, it's state where we should put the pressure. And yes,
Right,
right.
where they should be underwriting those costs, based on whatever metrics that they are.
Right.
Just like with telephone service, right? That minimal telephone service in rural areas still has to be provided.
Right. And the state can't underwrite it. They could just mandate it, I would think.
Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, Carter was saying exactly what I was thinking. And this is obviously beyond whatever, but you look at electric companies, and those are utilities. And I mean, I have advocated for a long time that internet companies should be regulated like utilities. They are not. I mean, they fit the economic definition of a utility, high barrier to entry, yada yada yada. I think they fit the public service definition of utility. But either way, Carter's exactly right. These are, even if they're not a utility, highly regulated entities that I think we should be pushing at the state level and also at the city level, because not only are they providing services to citizens and therefore getting money off of it, they're also big contractors of the city. Why are we paying them lots of money to do X, Y, Z? I think Verizon was doing the E911. How are they not? And they're using public land in order to put their wires down and all that fun, their cables down. How are we not pushing on them to deliver basic services to communities that desperately need it?
Okay. Well, sounds like we need to reach out to our state elected officials tomorrow on this. I think those are some great ideas.
I mean, I also think there's an antitrust aspect to this, but we don't to collectively not operate in a certain area, for me, smells of antitrust, but I don't know.
And absolutely, and that is an important issue. But right now, we're trying to focus on things that get children access to internet by September. So
For free.
For free.
Other places and other states in the Midwest and the West have been fighting this for a long time. Parts of Western Nebraska don't have internet. Parts of South Dakota don't have internet. The difference here is whether it's a requirement to deliver the services of education. That was never a requirement in the fight before, or that was never a factor in the fight before.
It's essentially a de facto factor now.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And I think it's also because there isn't, so many households don't have internet access in New York City. I think it's also being used as an excuse to provide an inferior remote learning product. But that's just my opinion.
I agree with that opinion, Janine.
Yes, I think. And maybe we can add that in and make it a little tougher. The digital divide should not be an excuse. It's an opportunity to create equity.
I like that.
Any other comments on the digital divide? And obviously, if people have thoughts on this, you can email after. I would also like to draft a short resolution, just sort of memorializing the commitments that we have for the Hudson Square and Bleecker schools. Just to sort of put those front and center in front of elected officials and remind people what those commitments are. But I haven't had a chance to draft that, but it would be a version of the slides that you saw today.
Very good idea. And did Gigi say they were going to do it?
What?
Did Gigi say they were going to do it? What'd she say? How did you hear her?
She said that the ball's in, NYU keeps saying the ball's in the city's court, but that we could be open to a more liberal interpretation of funding. And the restrictive declaration, which is the governing document, does not, it just says the school has to be funded. It doesn't define what funding is. I'm not a lawyer, but it isn't a defined term. So I think there probably is a lot of wiggle room there. But she didn't quite say that, but I did take notes.
Keen, she also said that that we've been working with other elected officials regarding how we want to see us, what kind of school we want to see there. So we have a lot of cross reference with other politicians about what we want there. And she says that we've been a big advocate and she wants us to continue that. That's what I heard.
That's good. I think she was moved.
Yes.
A little bit, right?
Absolutely. And both of, when Hudson Square was rezoned, the Hudson Square School was in what is currently Speaker Johnson's district, but it is now also in Council District 1. So both of these schools are in Council District 1.
Mm-hmm.
Which is,
You
Chin.
probably also get an update from NYU on where they stand.
Yeah.
And, using that space, because COVID is certainly going to change their outlook potentially on their facilities and just their general maintenance, because they're not collecting fees. I think as long as they don't have people using their facilities.
Well, I don't know. I think they're, I don't know what their plans are. So that's probably worth checking out. But I thought that NYU and Columbia both announced that they would be back without a lot of details.
Oh, yeah, no, right. But I'm just saying that the past semester, may have changed their outlook on developing additional properties.
Although I will say that I don't think they have, they're building almost, 1.7 million square feet at 181 Mercer. And they get about, I think, 20 or 30,000 square feet below grade at the Bleecker School building. So while it's a really big school, it is a very tiny blip in terms of NYU's overall real estate portfolio. And I think they've blown their financial wad in terms of, I mean, they're in terms of financing the 181 Mercer building. I just don't see them going into, you know, putting their bond rating at risk and doing a lot more development, or necessarily developing something as small as that building versus other ones. I guess I'm not as optimistic. I don't think they have any clear plans for that site. I mean, it's worth asking, but.
They might be cheaper to acquire additional property too.
That's true.
So it's.
That is true. I want to, with the comments suggested, I just want to take a formal vote on the first resolution in support of open streets for schools and addition of school sites support safe reopening. With all in favor, if you could say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any recusals? Okay. I want to take a quick vote on the second resolution in support of immediate solutions to reduce the digital divide. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? No. Okay, any recusals? Wonderful. I will work on the third resolution, and I might reach out to a couple of you for some of the suggestions that you made today. That's it.
Okay, thanks.
Dean, you said next month we're meeting.
Yeah, oh, sorry, thank you. Well, here's a couple thoughts. I think we should reach out to each school in CB2 to find out what's going on with the reopening plans. I mean, it sounds like we have contacts at PS3, so I can follow up with those parents. Patricia, can you reach out to PS 130?
Sure.
And Mar, can you reach out to PS 41? You saw something in the chat. I know Mar is.
She said yes.
You said yes. Great. And my son is doing baseball this summer, and the PTA president's child is on the team. So I see the 75 Morton PTA president several times a week. So I will, and she's on their reopening task force. So I will take that one on, which isn't a big stretch. And I'll also reach out to City as School. We have other high schools. You know, Amy, would you want to reach out to Broome Street Academy and see what their needs are?
Sure.
So, and we have Harvest Collegiate and Harvey Milk, which, you know, I continue to email, but I don't have a relationship there. And then we have NYC, if anyone has any relationships there. And then we have NYC High School and Chelsea Vocational, which, by the way, their plans to move to a new location are also on hold. So, you know, I don't have an update on that other than I keep checking to see if there's an update.
I can reach out to NYU Vocational.
Oh, the Chelsea Vocational? Great.
Chelsea Vocational, yeah, I have a contact there.
Great. Akila, I'm going to give you the principal for NYC High School just because they share a building. You might as well reach out to both. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Michael, you had your hand raised?
Hi, Janine, thanks. I'm wondering if I can indulge everyone for 5 seconds to share something on screen that's pertinent here. Not too good at using this. Host disabled, attendee.
Oh, you have to be a host?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me describe what it was then.
Carter, do you want to make, well, what is it? Is it, it's not what you emailed me, is it?
No,
Okay,
not
good,
at all.
Okay.
No.
Carter, can you make Michael a co-host so he could share it?
You should be able to share it now.
You should be able to share now.
Okay, thank you so much.
What could it be? It could be a great cartoon, huh?
It's,
yes, it is
how
a
do
cartoon.
I get at it here? It's overlapping screens. One sec.
I know, I had my own.
Okay, can you see this graphic?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, the point of it is New York has done really well with COVID, but most of the country is doing atrociously. So I grabbed this off the internet, and I just thought it would be good to bear in mind that while we're struggling with reopening the schools, both for the safety of the students and the teachers, other states are right in the throes of peaks of the epidemic, and they're still talking about reopening the schools. Just for a little perspective.
Yes.
Yes.
So what are we supposed to conclude from that?
Well, I dare say that we're having the appropriate conversations, but bear in mind that for nearly every other state in the union, especially the 35 or so that are seeing record levels, they shouldn't be having this conversation at all.
So.
Thanks.
So in terms of August, perhaps I mean, there's a couple of ideas. I would like to have an August meeting. In two ideas, which are, this morning I spent a lot of time talking to Michael Markowitz at the SCA, and we were talking about filtration systems, and 75 Morton's got a new building. So they've got the best that the SCA has to offer. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the state of the art, but it's the best that's been built in New York City schools. And he gave me a new person for facilities, Division of School Facilities, and perhaps we could have that person come present to us, and perhaps we could get representatives from each of these reopening groups also to join us. I mean, these are just ideas. I only got this guy's name earlier today. The person I formally reached out to had retired. So Michael, did you have a suggestion on that?
Not directly, but two things. One, it was Mike Mirasola, not Michael Markowitz.
Oh my God, sorry. Yeah,
That's okay.
Mike
We're actually neighbors, and we've known each other a long time.
Yes,
and the other was
blending you into one person.
That's okay. Going back a little bit, the 64 square foot per student guidance, that just boggles my mind because it makes no distinction over whether school buildings are sealed or have openable windows. And if they're sealed, they need to have certain kind of air conditioning filtration systems. I don't pretend to have the details of it memorized. That meet certain standards for, like we're all used to hearing about N95 for masks. Well, there are similar kind of high-tech technical certifications for filtration systems. But to have one square footage across the board when we just can't suddenly triple the number of, or whatever it is, double, triple, quadruple the number of square feet without considering whether it's an old building that you can open the windows, which is a benefit, or a new building that's sealed where you then have to look at the air filtration. Otherwise, everybody's just breathing the same bugs over and over as they run in a circle.
Yeah, and Mike said he did receive calls from principals who said the teachers nobody wants the inside classrooms, the science labs or whatever, because they're worried about exactly that. So those were some ideas. I don't have a date. I was going to reach out. Does anyone have any amazing travel plans that will take you away from the internet for August?
I don't have amazing travel plans, and maybe this, you all know, I mean, you're much more in touch, but I was talking to a teacher and her husband, and should we be maybe exploring privacy and technology? What I was hearing is that a fair number of teachers, this is, anecdotal, just one source, are concerned because when they were doing Zoom and other things, kids were taking the videos and manipulating them and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And so a lot of teachers are talking about remote learning, saying, what are you telling me? Am I going to have to be on a camera all day? And what's happening with this video? And we're not even also addressing things like privacy for kids and families who may not want anyone to know where they are or something. So I don't know if that might not be appropriate, but that's the first time I'd heard anybody talk about those concerns.
Yeah. You know what? Let me reach out to Leonie Hameson. I'm always mispronouncing her name because I know she's been very involved on data privacy issues. I don't know if this is something she's tackled, but she would probably be a good person to start with. I also wouldn't want this to be an excuse, again, for not providing good synchronous instruction. you know, like one of my kids had synchronous instruction in the beginning, or the Zoom bombing, and it was very common for, you know, 7th graders or 8th graders at one school to try to log into a class at another school. And then they added the waiting rooms and they solved that problem. And you know, so there's like, you know, there's this technology solution to a technology problem in many cases.
I agree. I'm just saying that I was starting to hear that this is some of the reasons, these are reasons that are now coming up about their concerns. So
yeah,
we might not, maybe we shouldn't address it, but I just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah.
I also had a question. Does anyone know what the UFT response is to the reopening plan?
Good question.
I Googled that earlier today, and I thought it's over a week ago, Gotham Gazette has a 30-minute interview with Michael Mulgrew, the Max and Murphy podcast. I have not listened to that. I have talked to some people, and the pivot that I actually have not had any answers, but the pivot is typically, we really need the HEROES Act, we need more money, let's push to get the HEROES Act passed. So I haven't had my questions directly answered. It's sort of a pivot to, we need more money and everybody needs to be safe. And to be safe, we need more money.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in the SLT meeting on our school. The teachers were really outraged at the plan. There was a tremendous amount of outrage at SLT meeting amongst the teachers.
And what didn't they like about it?
The outrage was over no guidance or information given to creating safety in the schools. The schools are not getting any guidance on what the cleaning plans will be and all the safety measures that go into controlling the virus. Another thing that they were outraged about is this difference between, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
The remote learning and the in-person learning, and that they're given no guidance on how to teach and also conduct remote learning simultaneously. And also they're outraged about not, like, if they're expected to do that, the level of synchronous learning, which most of the teachers in our school thought they really needed to do for the elementary school age, will not be getting done. And that will, you know, terribly affect the quality of the education for the kids. So those were, and also the fact that teachers, if a teacher is living with someone who is high risk for COVID, or as a child or a family member who's high risk for COVID, they are not allowed to opt out of in-person instruction. And the only option that they're left with is taking an unpaid leave of absence, which is criminal. And that they are...
I didn't realize that was the case.
Yes.
That is true, okay.
They are only allowed if they themselves personally have a health problem, but like my husband is a teacher and we live with my mom who's 76. So, you know, he would still have to go into schools and teach.
Got it.
Even
I see what you're, I didn't realize the distinction between the teacher versus the teacher's family members.
Even if it's their child, right,
Yeah.
who has a health problem.
That's ridiculous.
Anything.
Kind of crazy.
So there's a tremendous amount of outrage amongst just the teachers in our school, you know, because it's back to the same issue as in the very beginning when they took so long to close schools. I mean, using teachers as babysitters and putting, you know, their families and their lives at risk for. So it really hasn't changed.
Oh, okay. I think we can add something into, I don't know. I think we can add more into that, back to the urgency of the space issue. Yeah, and teachers are just angry. I mean, everybody's upset because you're getting it's almost impossible to deliver a good education product, and and to receive a good education product. given these constraints.
And I also have to say the principal was outraged too.
Yeah.
The leadership in our school was also outraged by it. So I think principals and teachers are pretty much on the same page.
Yeah. I do want to just, I sent the article, Amy sent it to me last Friday, and I sent it to everyone. I don't know if people were able to read it. It was a Daily News opinion piece about what's called split schedules, which the city did in the 1950s in the post-World War II baby boom. So the kids would go to school, one group of kids would go to school from, for example, 8 to noon. They'd clean the school. Presumably you would do PE after school. You know, you would run around the park after school, and then a second set of kids would attend school from 1 to 5. But the kids would be in the building every day. The teachers would have to teach an extra long day. You'd have to clean the building twice, once in the middle of the day and once at the end of the day. Amy, what else should I add to that? I mean, I just want to get people's feedback on that.
Yeah,
as parents.
I mean, just remember in the 50s and 60s, there was no pandemic, but, which is a big difference. But it's, so comparison wise, they would get 4 hours of instruction compared to 5 that they currently have. So they'd get more hours of in-person instruction, obviously per day and per week. Kids would be in school every single day. You can, it would take care of the how can parents go to work, because I believe there's a parallel effort on to expand after school programs, right? So either before school or after school programs, so that the kids have some place to go, and some place where things are actually happening. They're just not warehouse somewhere. Supposedly this plan was run by a lot of different departments, and it is not a problem to be able to clean the school to what it needs to be in that 1 hour break. Obviously there would be a deeper cleaning at night. You know, it's doable with the buses, etc. And then in the 50s and 60s, what they did is they traded more vacation days for the extra hours. So they would stick another vacation day or two around a 3-day weekend. And it's interesting, this couple that I was just talking to that I mentioned, when I said, well, what would you feel about vacation days? Their eyes lit up. They're like, wow, that's a good trade. I didn't know that this spring that they cut teachers' vacation days. They did not have their spring break, and they didn't have.
They didn't have spring break.
Right. But you know, you'd still have to have, but okay, so you have fewer kids in the class, right? Because you're cutting them in half. But you still have to do all the other stuff. You know, you have to have the masks. You have to have, you know, air circulating. You have to, I mean, you can't not do the other things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Fewer of them.
It would just get the kids in school every day, because I think other than, I wish I could have the teacher's name, majority of teachers are not providing synchronous instruction daily for their students, whether because they don't have the technology, or they're concerned about privacy, or they just don't know how to do it.
Right.
It's just not happening.
Right. So that is a doable option. They just have to negotiate with the teachers who would be working more hours.
And the union for cleaning, by the way, I checked, is 32 BJ, which is the same as the doormat. It's a big union.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear what parents, teachers, grandparents think of that idea.
I'm thinking if I were a teacher, I'd want a PPE every day, a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Whatever structure, I mean, whether you go, because the teachers are there every day. It's what the kids aren't there. So the teachers are going to want PPE every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, Markowitz here. I don't think it's fair to ask teachers to do anything less to protect themselves until you know everyone you're interacting with is healthy than what healthcare providers do for themselves to keep themselves safe. And not to get too much into detail, but I'm going through a little bit of this at work myself. What level of protection should management provide to the employees?
And testing. right?
Yeah.
Of the
You just
testing.
can't pretend that's normal. Well, for testing, what we're doing right now is everybody gets temperature zapped before they get into the building. But that's such a trailing indicator, but
Yeah.
it's the only thing we could do on the fly.
Well, the thing is that what you're talking about is really important. It doesn't matter which plan you pick, right? So all those things are common denominators in every single plan. You would need all those things. So it's just talking about a couple different things. Is it better to have kids there every day, 5 days a week, with some kind of expanded, learning before and after, depending what, and all other things being equal, right? So you had checking the temperatures, you had the PPE, and all that kind of stuff. Is that a better scenario?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
In
there's a
terms
very
of the kids having a routine, going to school every day. And you
Yes.
can do that 4 days a week. I mean, teachers wouldn't have to work. They could get 3-day weekends every weekend. But for the kids, this, Monday, Thursday, morning, afternoon is terrible by itself. So kids need routines, especially at this age.
Yes.
And that is asking a lot of the teachers, it's better if they're there the 5th day too, because it also does help take care of the parents going back to school. To work, right?
Yeah.
So this is all of it. But
I mean, has
Yeah,
any
teachers, then the teachers are doing, at least they don't have to do new lesson plans. The same thing in the morning and the afternoon.
Yeah, they'll probably be better at it second time.
I mean, there's also 2 other outstanding things that I think a lot about in terms of returning to school is, has the DOT or MTA released any plans for cleaning or public transportation and making it safe for transporting all of our families to and from school every day?
Well, Akila, I dare say that the MTA is doing a better job of cleaning the buses and the trains than virtually anything else around town.
They are?
Not to take anything away from your concern, but I actually do think they are addressing that very well. If I could, as long as I'm on mic, go back to something Amy said. For exactly the same reasons that you want to split the kids into shifts, partly for population density, but the other reason is if one batch of kids get sick, at least you know which is the safe batch. And for that reason, my office early on went to you're on the A team or the B team, and you should not be in the office if it's not your day. So if somebody gets sick on the A team or the B team, we know half the team is still healthy.
Well, the problem is the teachers are on all the teams. So if anyone gets sick, the school is shut down and we're back to remote learning.
Well,
I think yes.
There's some ways to think that through. For example, if you have, just to be silly about it, let's say you had a 4-room schoolhouse and you had 4 sections of 3rd graders. 2 of them with their teachers meet Monday, Wednesday, 2 of them meet Tuesday, Thursday. So if any combination of teacher or student get exposed in either cohort, you have a cohort you don't have to do contact tracing on because you know they weren't exposed.
And I think the problem now is that because they're going to the 65 square feet, they need all the teachers they can get.
Right.
Then the question to me is, which is the lesser of the 2 evils?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, you have to look at all the factors, and I mean, life is a risk, and there are costs no matter what you do. So figure out which is the best of the options.
That's very true, and part of that is doing a really fair assessment of what the different risk factors are, and not just focus on any one of them.
And again, in terms of human development, what kids need, they need school. And they need routines.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, it's got to be steady. And we can say back to your resolution, Janine, if a kid misses a year of school, that is a lifetime problem. So you can say, we're sacrificing a whole generation of adults throughout the 21st century. I mean, you can really put it big, but it's not nothing for a kid to miss a year of school.
I've already missed half a year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've already done some damage. We can fix it. but I don't know if we can, but it should be fixed. It can be, kids can make up for a trauma that is short term. They cannot lose a whole year.
Just one other data point from the 50s and 60s. This lasted for 12 years, and performance data, they did just as well or better as far as graduation rates, doing the split section. So that 1 less hour a day was not the end of it at all. So, I mean, it's a different time, it's a different place, it's not a pandemic, but that's just another data point that the students did graduation rates, academic achievements, they did well or better than.
And that was all grades?
That was all grades, yes.
Wow.
Get out of here with that, please.
I didn't realize that.
And other parts of the country, I don't know any more about this, but from what I understand, other parts of the country have done this a period, different times since then. This was not the only time it happened. But I know nothing more about it than that as far as other parts.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's it. I just wanted to sort of share that a little bit. There's something else in the chat. Okay. Okay, I think that is it. I'm looking at the chat. Oh yeah, Michael. Yep. Oh yeah, thank you. I want to thank everyone for spending the time tonight, and we'll be back as soon as possible. Please keep sending ideas for August, but I think we should have a meeting. I'd like to reach out to the facilities guys, and thank you for everyone who took on a couple schools to reach out to as well.
Hey, thank you, Janine.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.